Hey everyone, we have finally made it to our last unit. Unit 8 is how we're going to wrap up this year. It's going to start with probability and then go to statistics, and those are both combined in Unit 8. Today we're starting with probability. I'm sure this will look familiar to you as we kind of head in. Now, what we're actually going to do is we're going to start on the back side of the front page of your packet. It got copied backwards, and I think it makes more sense if we start here. So if you would turn to that page, we're going to start off with what probability is. Probability is the likelihood of an event happening. It can be expressed as a number between 0 and 1. Note it can also be represented by percents. Now, if we think of equivalent percents to 0 and 1, 0 obviously would be 0%. Oops, I'm running out of space here. 0%. And 1, we talked a lot about this when we did our unit on percentages. 1, all of something, or 100%. Now, we talk sometimes about this likelihood of an event happening, but instead of using numbers or percentages, we will use words. So here on the scale between our 0 and 1, our 0% and 100%, we have these terms. Now, if it is a 0% chance, it's impossible to happen. So we have all of these terms here shown in the same order that they would fall here between 0 and 1. So if we say this is a 0% chance, this would be a 50% chance, this would be a 100% chance. This is where the 50-50 comes from. If you've heard someone say there's a 50-50 chance, there's a 50% chance of it not happening or a 50% chance of it happening in its likelihood. All right, so we would use terms like impossible if we were talking about something with a 0% chance. We would use certain with something that's a 100% chance because it's definitely going to happen. Equally likely is going to be that middle point, that 50% mark here. And then unlikely would fall less than 50% chance, and likely would fall on the over 50% chance side as those descriptors. Okay, so now let's look at some examples. Let's use those terms, those 6 terms that we just described, to identify these different situations. So snowing when it's 40 degrees outside. Well, it's got to be below freezing for it to snow, for that water vapor to freeze. So that would be not unlikely. That would be an impossible situation. Burning your dinner if you cook it too long. Well, that's likely. Now you might be thinking that is certain, but cooking something too long does not necessarily mean it's going to burn. It just might not taste as good as it could. For the water boiling at 75 degrees, well, that's definitely not warm enough to boil water, so that's going to be impossible. Getting a ticket if you are speeding, well, this is where we have to kind of weigh our options here. So you could get a ticket if you're speeding because you're breaking the law, but it doesn't mean that there's necessarily going to be a police officer there while you're speeding watching you. And we have to look at, I guess, the possibilities. So we could say it's maybe likely or equally likely that it would happen. Scoring 2 points on a safety in a football game. Well, that is not a common occurrence in football, so we would say that's unlikely. It's not impossible, but unlikely. And a coin landing on heads when it's flipped, this one's going to be equally likely because there's only 2 sides to that coin. It has a 50-50 chance, an equally likely chance of landing heads or tails. All right, so hopefully this kind of um, lays out what probability is, gives you an idea of that. Now we're going to look at a few situations. So turn back to the front side of your handout here. And it says simple probability is the ratio of successful outcomes to the total number of outcomes. Now, with simple probability, very important here, it's a ratio. All right, we have different ways to write ratios, and sometimes we write, let's say it's a 1 in 2 chance. So there's one successful outcome and 2 total outcomes. We could write that like this, a 1 in 2 chance. Oftentimes, when we were working with ratios, we wrote it as a fraction. So that happens really often. Or we can use words, which we don't use quite as often, but a 1 out of 2 chance would be another way to say that. Would you please write those down? These are definitely the ways that we're going to be representing these. And also remember, from what we just talked about on the last page, these can be represented in percentages. So we could represent all of these ways of writing the ratio as 50% chance. Okay? Now, we're going to determine on these two situations below some different probabilities. So a standard number cube is rolled, a 6-sided cube. What is the probability of rolling these 3 outcomes? So remember, we're representing the successful outcomes to the total. So if we were to think of a number cube and all of its outcomes on a standard number cube, you could get a 1, a 2, 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. So that's our 6 total outcomes. What that means is if we are rolling, if we're asked to find the probability, these are all going to be out of 6 because there's 6 total outcomes. What is our probability of getting a 6? That's one of these 6 outcomes, because rolling that number cube, there's only one chance of getting that 6. So our probability would be a 1 out of 6 chance. The same is going to be for a 5. All right, there's only one side of that number cube that's a 5, so that's going to have a 1 out of 6 chance. But an odd number, if we identify all the odd numbers here on the number cube, there's 3 of them. That's a 3 out of 6 chance. And oftentimes we would reduce that, simplify it, just like we would with fractions, and we'd say it's a 1 out of 2 chance if we were to do that simplification. Okay? So that's how this is going to work. You have 5 other situations to take a look at to identify the different probabilities there. Read the situations carefully. If it doesn't show you all the outcomes, make sure you identify how many total outcomes there are and then the successful outcomes that it could be. All right. Go ahead and do that. Then check with the answer key, and we will look at one other situation here. Okay, now that you've checked that, we have over on the other side of your handout these 2 spinners, and I'm going to do this first one here to identify that for you, and then I want you to do the second one. All right, so we have a spinner, just like with a game. There'd be a little arrow there that you'd flip and see what it lands on. Now, we have first to figure out how many total outcomes there are. So I would count up how many different possibilities there are. And I have to pay attention because, well, never mind. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different outcomes, 7 total outcomes. All right. Now, the first question asks, and this is a shorthand abbreviation for probability. This is how we show probability. So the probability of getting red. So if we look at our spinner all around, we have one section here that's red. That's a 1 in 7 chance, 1 out of 7 chance of getting red. The next one says the probability of getting green. So I scan again. Green is only listed once out of these 7 outcomes. So we still have a 1 in 7 probability. There's no need to reduce or simplify this. This is already a simplified probability. The only other way we could show this probability would be to turn this into a percentage. And we do that by dividing it. 1 divided by 7 would give me a decimal that I could then turn into a percentage. All right, next it says the probability of blue or red. All right, so blue or red. We have blue, blue, red. So that's 3 of the 7 outcomes. Next, the probability of yellow or blue. So we have yellow and then 2 blues, 1 yellow and 2 blues. That's going to have the same probability as the blue or red one does. No, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. There's actually 2 yellows and 2 blues. So that's 4 out of 7 would be the probability for that one. Next, and these next 2 pay close attention to, because this is a different idea. I don't think it's too difficult, but it's just a different idea. So it's hard maybe to see in how it copied, but there's a little apostrophe here. There's a little marking here. And there's also one here on question 12. That means, what is the probability of not getting green? All right, so we're saying more or less, what's the probability of getting anything but green? So on the spinner, green is one of the outcomes, only one of the outcomes. So our probability of not getting green is all the other outcomes on that spinner. So there's 6 other outcomes, 6 other outcomes that would be not green. Okay, then we look at purple, and purple is only listed once as well. So this says, what's the probability of not getting purple? So if there's 1 purple, all the other probabilities, all of the 7 other probabilities, I'm sorry, there's actually 6 other outcomes that would be favorable to not getting purple. And that's how we would show that. So pay close attention, look closely for that apostrophe to make sure you don't miss it, because then you're going to answer the question wrong. And if you would turn to the second page, we've got 2 pages in this activity. I'm not going to go through this next page with you. I will have the answers posted for you, but this copied terribly, and I apologize for that. What we have, and please label with me here, is we have a box of candy. It's showing the candies inside, and we have different flavored candies. So I'm putting a G here for grape on all of these grape flavored candies that are hard to read. It wasn't written here on the candy. All right, so we have 4 grape candies here in the box. These 5 down here that you can't read are cherries, cherry flavored candies. Okay, so we have 5 cherry flavored candies, we have 4 grape flavored candies, and then you can see the lemon flavored candy in there. Please use that information to answer the questions, so that of course matches up with what the answers will show at the end. And then if you turn to the back, there is another, I believe it's a spinner. Yep, another spinner. And again, copied terribly. What we have here is we have, let's see here, a section. Nope, sorry, not there. Section there and a section there. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts, 7 outcomes on this spinner. There is 1 black section, and there are 3 gray sections. So this is gray, gray, and gray. And then, of course, 3 white sections. All right, so use those colors, identify those colors on your handout. So just draw and label it, please, so that you can, again, have the correct information as you move forward. All right, check those answer keys, Ask questions on Zoom if you have any. You do have some practice problems to take a look at. And don't forget, we've got an iReady lesson due this week, due Tuesday at the end of the day. All right, everybody have a great day.